So, I popped into High House Insurance to see if they could quote for my house insurance rather than using the internet. High House got a great deal. So, to celebrate, I bought a posh hairdo. It made me look beautiful, gorgeous enough to become a highly paid model. I then won Celebrity Big Brother. I had an affair with an MP. Now, I'm promoting a doll of me that says, "Cool blimey, you're well fit."
Happy things happen when you talk face-to-face with High House Insurance. See if we can beat your home insurance quote from the internet. Find us on the High Street, Selsey, or call 606 552.
Welcome once again to Selsey Internet Radio. My name's Keith Barnes, and as usual we've got a varied programme for you this week. And we're going to start the proceedings with a pop over to Pat Reed, who's going to tell us what's going on in and around Selsey for the coming 7 days. This section of the programme is sponsored by our friends at Star Advertising Products.
Hi, I'm Pat Reed, and this is some of what's on in Selsey for week commencing Saturday, the 12th of July. On Saturday the 12th, Sussex Grange will be holding their garden fete at 14 Vincent Road at 2 p.m. There will be many stalls and all proceeds will be donated to St Wilfrid's Hospice, Selsey Cancer Relief and Sussex Air Ambulance. Also on Saturday the 12th, the Selsey Scout Group's charity shop at their headquarters in School Lane will be open as usual from 10 a.m. till noon, where they will be selling bric-a-brac, books, clothes, etc. On Sunday the 13th, the Selsey Carer Support Group will be holding a car boot sale at the Academy in School Lane from 8 a.m. On Wednesday 16th of July, the Crafty Natter Club are meeting between 2 and 4 p.m. at Selsey Methodist Church. They have demonstrations of all types of crafts, from embroidery, flower arranging, card making, quilting to crocheting and bread making, and you're invited to bring along any project you're working on. Have a cup of tea and a biscuit while you work, and for more information telephone Lisa on 601032. On Thursday the 17th, Link, Ladies in Contact, will be holding their meeting in St Peter's Church Hall at 7:15 p.m. The speaker will be Penny Hardwick, talking about China and Tibet. The cost is £1.50 to include coffee, tea and biscuits, together with a free raffle ticket. For more information, ring Mary on 604718 or Beryl on 603750. And lastly, on Friday the 18th, the Darby and Joan Club will be meeting at 2 p.m. in St Peter's Church Hall. All are welcome, and there is fun bingo and a nice cup of tea. For more information, contact Jill on 604187. That's all for this week. Speak to you soon.
Thank you for that, as always, Pat. Now I have a question for you. Could Hugh Graham survive on a diet of fish and no wine? Let's find out now as we pop across to Tuppenny Rice to hear Lynn's latest recipe.
Right, we have Lynn Reed from Tuppenny Rice, and she's going to excite our taste buds. What with?
Salmon fish cakes. How do salmon fish cakes start? Oh, Hugh.
No, it's not. It's just green. I don't like fish.
Oh no, I know.
So this is, however, one for Marjorie.
Okay, salmon fish cakes are really good. You could use tuna instead of salmon, although that's not going to help you. There's no wine in this recipe this week, Hugh. Else people would be saying we're drunkards.
Well, they say that anyway, but the whole point is, I can't see how you can cook without wine.
Well, you can drink the wine while you're cooking, but no wine in the recipe this week.
Right.
So just again this week, you always need your sea salt and freshly ground black pepper with me, don't you?
Yeah.
50 grams of fresh or frozen peas, it doesn't matter which actually for this. 600 grams of potatoes, and what potatoes are we going to use, Hugh?
Oh, Mary's Piper.
Mary's Piper potatoes. Half a bunch of fresh chives. And for this we're going to use tinned salmon, so 180 grams tins of salmon is plenty for this.
Okay.
The juice of a lemon or 1 lemon, a tablespoon of plain flour, plus a little bit of extra flour just to dust over the top of the cakes. 1 large free-range egg, but it doesn't have to be free-range, all right? And some olive oil. Now, this is a really lovely recipe, and it's also really ideal for freezing. So the idea being my meal for one series is that you could make a batch of 6 or 8 and put them in the freezer. You just take out 2 at a time when you want them.
Okay.
It's a really good...
Hang on, 2 at a time, 2?
Well, yeah.
Are you being greedy?
I'm always greedy. I always want more than I should have.
Fine.
But just make sure that you defrost them thoroughly before you use them, because it's fish, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Half fill a large saucepan with cold water and add a tiny pinch of salt. Place it on a high heat and bring it to the boil. And if you're using fresh peas, pod them into a bowl and leave them to one side.
Right.
I love to pod my fresh peas. Use a peeler to peel the potatoes, then chop them into 1 centimetre chunks on a chopping board.
Yep.
All right. Once the water is boiling, carefully add the potatoes. We don't want any burns here.
So the spuds are really diced, aren't they?
They are. Yeah, because, I mean, you're going to mash them.
Yeah.
So the smaller the better, really.
Yeah.
Bring it back to the boil, then turn the heat down to a medium and simmer them for around 10 minutes until they're cooked through. Actually, this is a really good recipe for older children to do, because it's not hard at all.
Okay.
It's just the boiling of the potatoes that you need to oversee, really. Add the peas for the last 2 minutes, all right, of the potatoes. Then finally chop the chives and add them to a mixing bowl and drain the salmon in a sieve over the sink. Add the salmon to the bowl using a fork to flake it into small chunks, okay? Once it's cooked, drain the potatoes and peas in a colander over the sink and leave them to cool. Meanwhile, you can use a microplane to finely grate the lemon zest. Anybody that hasn't got, just at the very fine side of the grater, all right? Okay. Finely grate the lemon zest and add it to the bowl along with the flour. Crack in the egg and season with a tiny pinch of pepper. And once that's cooled, tip the potatoes and peas back into the pan and using a potato masher, mash them up really, really well. You could add some butter at this point. Add the mash to the bowl and mix together until it's really well combined, all right, with all of the ingredients and the salmon and everything. Sprinkle a little flour over a clean work surface and onto a large plate. Divide the mixture into 8 and using your hands to pat and squeeze them up. And you children love doing that bit, don't they? Make them into little shapes. And shape each ball into a fish cake, roughly about 2 centimetres thick. That's why I have 2.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Place them onto the flour plate, dusting your hands, and the top of each fish cake lightly with flour as you go.
So you could actually use jelly moulds for actually shaping these, couldn't you?
They might be quite hard to get out of the jelly moulds, though.
No. I mean, you could actually use them to make the shape, rather like sort of cutting biscuits.
Oh, yeah, you could use biscuit cutters.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could.
You get fish shapes and all sorts of things,
You can get fish shapes, so wouldn't that be lovely for the children as well?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in fact, you could make all sorts of shaped fish cakes, couldn't you?
Including stars.
Stars, yes, and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Carefully place the fish cakes onto the pan and cook for 3 to 4 minutes with a little tablespoonful of olive oil on each side until they're crisp and golden. That's the colour you want on a fish cake.
Yeah.
It's not covered in breadcrumbs. It's nice and fish goldeny, almost like a bubbly, squeaky effect.
All right. Yeah.
Turning carefully with a fish slice. Cut the zested lemon into wedges and serve the fish cakes with some seasonal green vegetables or a nice fresh green salad and tomatoes. And they're absolutely lovely.
Asparagus would go well with that, wouldn't it?
Oh, asparagus is good. Why, have you got a glut of asparagus?
No, I just like asparagus.
I like asparagus too. So Marjorie, if you're listening, he'd like fish cakes with asparagus for tea.
I tell you what, next week I will tell you how to get rid of your old roast pork.
Okay, I'll put mine in the bin.
No, you mustn't do that. No. I will tell you a wonderful recipe for doing roast pork.
Oh, lovely. Thanks, Hugh. I look forward to it.
All right. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next we go over to the lovely Pat Reed, who must be most guys' worst nightmare. She knows what's on, what it costs and where it's at. Be careful, guys.
Hi, I'm Pat Reed, your monthly Selsey shopper. Each month I'll bring you a few informative and hopefully helpful hints of what's going on in Selsey shops. This month I have another 4 establishments which caught my eye on my walk around. I called into The Shop, which is a tea room and much more, opposite Selsey Tyre Centre in the High Street. The Shop houses an art exhibition which changes each month, all by local artists. They have crafts and cards also by local artists. Primarily, it's a nice place to meet and chat, serving tea, coffee and hot chocolate for as little as £1. They have speciality cafetières at £1.25, which, I'm told, include a very popular Ethiopian coffee and a lovely dark roast ground coffee, soft drinks and delicious-looking cakes and biscuits. Nearly all their goods and drinks are fair trade, and they're open from 9 until 1 p.m. Monday to Friday and 10 until 1 on a Saturday. So if you're feeling in need of a chat, drop into this friendly tea room where you'll get a warm welcome and you'll also have plenty to look at. A little further down the high street, I called into Reflex DVD rental and sales and computer specialists. They provide a whole range of services besides DVD rental, including sales and repair of mobile phones, personal computers, laptops and tablets. They will also design your website for you. So if you have any problems which you think they may be able to help you with, call them on Selsey 606067. This is also where Selsey Life magazine has its offices. On the same side of the high street towards Hillfield Road is the Selsey off licence. They always have 4 wines on display for sampling, and the range is changed every 6 weeks. A glass will cost you £2.50, but you can just have a taster free of charge if you're wanting to try the wines they have open for sampling. Their wine bulants can be called at any time during shop hours if you suddenly find yourself running out of wine when entertaining, and they're usually open until 10 p.m. at weekends. They have their own website, www.theselsey-off-licence.co.uk, and the Wine Bulance has its own page on Facebook, which is quite interesting. Just before the off-licence, I passed Country Gardens, which have a particularly eye-catching display of many shrubs and plants at the moment, as well as their large variety of fresh fruit and vegetables. So now's the time to choose a colourful display to add to your summer garden before they're all snapped up. For those of you who have parcels to post, try Hermes Couriers, who operate a pick-up service from one stop on the Selsey Parade. I use this service regularly, and it sometimes is half the price of what the post office and other couriers are charging. You do need the internet for this service, but if you're listening to this, the chances are that won't be a problem. They have a weight and size limit, I think of about 30 kilos, and you print out your own label and pay online, but it's very simple when following their instructions. You can have the parcel picked up from your home at a time to suit, or drop it in any time during opening hours at one stop, which I believe is open between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. on all days. Whilst doing your shopping this month, don't forget to pick up a Selsey Festival programme for all the August activities so that you don't miss anything this year. That's just a few of the shops I called into this month, but tune in for a few more tips in August.
Thank you as always, Pat. You must know this town inside out. Hugh is doing our film review this week, so let's go over and hear what he has to say about the epic film Noah.
Nearly everybody knows the gist of the story of the flood. You can find it in Genesis in the Bible, Surah 71 in the Quran. But could this wonderful tale be translated into an epic blockbuster? Cue director Darren Aronofsky and a stellar cast: Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, Anthony Hopkins, Emma Watson, Logan Lerman, Ray Winston and Douglas Booth. The running time of this film is 138 minutes and the certificate is 12A. Russell Crowe is excellent as the titular bearded man faced with an excruciating conflict, family versus faith, exuding the decency that compels an unseen deity to select him as the custodian of life on earth, after the decision has been made to drown mankind for its sins. Aronofsky and his cast ensures that we care for the plight of mankind, and in this film we're also subtly enticed into confronting our contemporary world and how we still treat it. Heartbreaking sacrifices made by Noah lead to a huge conflict with his wife Naamah, Jennifer Connelly, and sons Ham, Logan Lerman, and Shem, Douglas Booth, while Ray Winston's ruthless Tubal-Cain is determined to land himself a berth in the Ark at all costs. Aronofsky has declared Noah to be the least biblical film ever made, so you've been warned. The movie is not without its brilliance or moments of penetrating insight, but it gets the story wrong, indulges in eccentric exaggeration, and distorts the character of both Noah and God. Indeed, Aronofsky refuses to name God. and he substitutes the Creator instead. Those who know the story of Noah will expect to be irritated, but they will not expect to grieve. Hollywood has the same corporate values that it's always had, so we should not expect Noah's story to be told well. This film is sunk by its own special effects and very unhappy biblical distortion.
Thank you for that, Hugh. I have to admit that going to the pictures is my least favourite pastime, much to my wife's disappointment. So it's a good job it's not up to me to sit through these films. And now we're going over to what is probably my favourite item of the week always, and that's to listen to Giles and Hugh discussing what's on in the garden, or more likely what they can make wine out of.
Giles, we're approaching my mother's birthday in July.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, so...
Because your mother's doing very well, is she?
No, she's not. She's very old now.
Yeah, but she's still around, which is great.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
It's nice. At least it's a good month to have a birthday, isn't it?
It is. It's a lovely month. And she was born on St Swithin's Day, which is
really?
July the 15th.
Really?
Yeah. And do you know what they say about that, don't you?
Yes, I do indeed.
If it rains on that birthday, it rains for 40 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Probably will rain regardless, I'm sure, knowing our luck.
Yeah, all right.
House martins are very busy now hatching their second brood, and blackbirds are actually into their third brood now.
Yeah.
So they're very busy, some of these birds. This time of year is a very good idea. I know I mentioned Selsey Gardens the other week, but it's a very good idea in general to visit open gardens, because there are quite a lot being opened for this month and next month in aid again of charities, and they're well advertised. It's worth paying a visit because A, they're very nice to look at, and B, often some good ideas can be got.
Surely.
So that's I would suggest that. Tadpoles are now gone into baby frogs, and I don't know if people know, I'm sure they do, that a frog isn't actually fully grown until it's 5 years old.
Really?
Really.
Okay.
And another little interesting facet is male birds sing to warn off other males and attract females. Hence, that is the reason human males with good voices attract females better.
That explains why I've had such rotten luck in my life.
I don't know.
I sing like a rusty door in.
But no, you don't have to sing. It's just speaking. Mow lawns a bit less this month in dry weather. If it's when we get dry weather, hopefully we will. And if we do mow them a bit less. And also,
well, not only that, Giles, you put the cutters up, don't you?
You were going to say raise the cut, and then keep well watered to prevent them going brown, and also give them a feed.
Now we're lucky here because there's never been a hosepipe ban in Selsey.
No, there hasn't. No, I know exactly. So we're quite lucky in that way. Deadhead and feed all roses now, and apply well rotted manure to the beds. A teaspoon of sugar in a vase of water is a very great help for carnations and sweet peas. They will last a lot longer and keep the colour a lot better. Hang up, going back to elderflowers again, hang up bundles of elderflowers in the house wherever you want, and they will deter flies.
Is that true?
Well, I've used it. It
does
work. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Never water plant foliage. I'm sure people most know this. Never let watering go on the foliage in the sun, because the leaves are very sensitive and they will burn.
Okay.
So always water underneath. Another little passage to go out on: every man desires to live long, but no man would be old.
Yes, I think that's true.
I think it's very true.
Yeah, truth.
So on that happy note,
so that's the best of both worlds, isn't it?
Yeah,
if
you want to live long, but you don't want to be old.
That's true.
Well, I think we always think that, don't we?
I think that's very true.
Yeah.
All right, Giles. See you later in August.
See you later on. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye.
Almost as entertaining as any Monty Python sketch. And now we go to our final item for this podcast, which is director James Wesson reflecting on his visit to Auschwitz.
This week, 10 years ago, I spent a few days in Poland. I experienced the joys of a liberated, sophisticated and smiling Krakow, which in June is a city of sun, music and purposeful bustle. Its architecture is varied and beautiful, mercifully unaffected by the horrors of Hitler's war, although, of course, the same cannot be said of its people, who, after 5 years of the Nazis, then had to endure decades of Soviet oppression. And of all the great European cities, it most resembles Florence. It has vast squares, surrounded by cafes and bars, which overflow onto the cobbles. Traffic is kept away from the centre, and the sound of horses' hooves remind us of a gentler and a more peaceful time. Excellent food and drink are plentiful, and once the complexities of the zloty are mastered, are seemingly not expensive. Its churches thrive, and they stand defiantly as witnesses to the horrors of the 20th century. Evidence of their Pope, John Paul II, is everywhere, not least in Weil Cathedral, which has become a shrine for millions of pilgrims, and the place oozes the freshness and hope of the newly freed. The cruel, dark and frightening era of the dictators, although not forgotten, has more the feel of a bad dream, and the city looks resolutely forward, without dwelling on its tearful past, the signs of which are confined to the much-visited Jewish quarter, formerly the ghetto, but now also a place of warmth and celebration. An hour's drive to the west, however, it is a very different story, for there lies the small, nondescript town of Auschwitz, or, as it is better known, Auschwitz, a place, or rather 3 places, for there are 3 separate camps, of torture, terror and death. A site synonymous with the greatest crime ever committed against humanity, and one still capable of producing shudders of revulsion in its visitors. For, unlike Krakow, no effort has been made to forget its past. It remains, gently decaying, just as it was at its liberation. It is a place of memorial, and, in keeping with Jewish tradition, nothing has been restored or modernised, nor, apart from an international statue of remembrance, its inscription is written in every European language as well as in Hebrew, has anything new been built. The full obscenity of the Nazis' genocide is clear for all to see. Indeed, we are encouraged to soak it in and never to forget. There is no attempt to encourage forgiveness or understanding. Despite the thousands who visit the camps each month, there is no sign of commercialism, and no money changes hands. Visitors to Auschwitz look, learn, experience and feel. Almost without exception, they come away revolted, in a state of disbelief. People do not smile or joke there, and on departure they look shocked. Although birdsong has returned, even today the overwhelming aura is one of suffering, sadness and tragedy. Torture and violent death seep out of the pores of every brick and board, and the mournful spirits of over 6 million Jews are felt everywhere. Auschwitz was just one of the many concentration camps in that network designed to exterminate European Jewry, the final solution. It was predominantly a death camp, although it consisted in the main of 3 parts. Auschwitz main camp, Auschwitz, Birkenau and Monowitz. Eventually there were 28 Auschwitz sub-camps close to the various industrial facilities throughout Upper Silesia. The main camp is made up of permanent brick-built structures laid out symmetrically along tree-lined avenues. It was mainly a place of death, and its sites of execution and torture are everywhere. Scaffolds, walls peppered with bullets and so on. And it is also where many of the heinous medical experiments took place, and among a mass of grisly reminders of man's inhumanity to man, it is possible to see vast quantities of human hair for the making of mattresses, teeth with and without gold fillings, personal belongings of all descriptions, as well as hideous torture chambers. There is a crematorium through which visitors can walk in silence. It is exactly as it was left in 1945, except that an eternal candle now burns at its centre. Far and away most shocking, however, is Birkenau. Birkenau's construction began in the autumn of 1941, and it was built by the inmates themselves. At that stage, 10,000 Soviet prisoners, of whom only a few hundred were still alive the following spring. It consists of hundreds of rows of wooden or brick barrack blocks, many of which still stand, and where it is possible to see the appalling living conditions, as well as tragic inscriptions on the walls. The guards' watchtowers loom threateningly from the perimeter and the internal fences, and pay homage to that infamous structure at the entrance to the camp, through which engines pulled their cattle trucks of Jews. The platforms remain at the terminus, where the prisoners disembarked and were given a cursory glance by the doctors, who consigned them either to immediate death or to slavery. If it had not happened already, families were split up by gender and children were separated from their parents. The gas chambers are in the far distance near the memorial. Largely underground, Their roofs have fallen in. But how easy it is to envisage the orchestra at their entrances playing to calm the prisoners as they went for their so-called showers. The changing room is still visible, where the prisoners were told to put their clothes in a bundle so that they could easily find them after washing. So is the right turn into the vast shower rooms. So too are the hatches in the collapsed roof through which the Zyklon B capsules were introduced. Thus, it is easy to imagine the ensuing panic as the victims began to realise their fate, and it is said that usually there was left a pyramid of bodies with the last to die at its peak. One floor up are now the rotting crematoria used daily to dispose of thousands of corpses. It is a truly ghastly picture, although a few yards away is a small pond dug out of human ashes. In it are coots, fish and hundreds of frogs, and beside it is a plaque rejoicing that life has grown out of such death and suffering. There were 4 crematoria at Birkenau, and they had the capacity to murder 4,700 people every day. In other words, 150,000 a month. This was extermination on an industrial scale, and in total, 1.1 million people perished in Auschwitz, including over 200,000 children. Even though the sun was shining when I visited, there is nothing light about this place. You leave drained and deflated. It is not an enjoyable experience, and there is much which is hard to stomach. To go there is important, however, and thank goodness thousands do every year. It keeps in human consciousness the most shameful period in history, and in these troubled times there are lessons to be learnt, not least in seeing how man behaves and copes in the most extreme conditions. It also shows that racial and religious intolerance breeds evil. The ghastliness of Auschwitz is but an hour's drive from the charm of Krakow, but on the face of it they could be continents apart. Yet both places testify that in the end good will always prevail over evil. It shows that whilst human beings have been given the choice to follow either path, throughout history the vast majority have chosen the former. With today's growth in fundamentalist fanaticism in the pretense of religion, Auschwitz and the like serve to keep man's capacity to make the wrong choice in the forefront of our mind.
Thank you to James for that rather poignant story. It must have been very difficult reflecting on that. A great big thank you to the rest of the team for this production. My name's Keith Barnes and you've been listening to Selsey Internet Radio, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.